Okay.
Yep, all live now, team. You can start.
Good evening and welcome to the February meeting of Mansfield Shire Council. I'd like to welcome my fellow councillors and council executives, and I'd also like to welcome anyone from the public who's tuning in tonight for our first meeting for 2023. We've got a fair bit on the agenda tonight, so look forward to getting through this meeting. I'll start by calling on each councillor and ask them to verbally confirm that they can see all councillors and hear the proceedings. Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can hear the proceedings and see all councillors and council officers.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Rabi.
I can hear the proceedings and see all councillors and council officers.
And Councillor Webb.
I can hear the proceedings and see all councillors and council officers.
I'll now ask each councillor to confirm by raising their hand they could all hear each statement of each councillor. Thank you. Item number 3 is apologies. Madam CEO, do we have any apologies for tonight's meeting?
Yes, we do. We have an apology from Councillor Sladden, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I will now read the statement of commitment and call on each councillor to confirm their commitment. As councillors of Mansfield Shire, we are committed to ensuring our behaviour meets the standards set by the Mansfield Shire Councillor Code of Conduct and Councillor Charter. We will at all times faithfully represent and uphold the trust placed in us by the community. Councillor Holcomb.
I confirm my commitment.
Councillor Rabi.
I confirm my commitment.
And Councillor Webb.
I confirm my commitment.
Thanks, councillors. I will now ask Deputy Mayor Councillor Rabi to recite the acknowledgement for country.
Our meeting is being held on the lands of Taungurung people, and we wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. We would also like to pay our respects to their elders past and present and Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Councillors, do we have any conflicts of interest in relation to tonight's agenda? Councillor Holcomb.
No conflicts of interest, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rabi.
No conflict of interest, Mr. Mayor.
And Councillor Webb.
I have no conflicts regarding tonight's agenda items. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Item number 7 is the confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I have a motion? Councillor Holcomb.
That the minutes of the Mansfield Shire Council meetings held on 13th of December 2022 and 30th of January 2023 be confirmed as an accurate record.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. I have a seconder to that motion. Councillor Webb. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Item number 8 is representations. Madam CEO, do we have any representations tonight, this meeting?
No, Mr. Mayor, no representations tonight.
No notice of motions. Item number 10 is the Mayor's report, which I'll take as read. Councillors, can I have a motion in relation to that? Councillor Rabi.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Motion is that Council receive the Mayor's report for the period of the 13th of December 2022 to the 16th of February 2023.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Could I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Webb. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Item number 11 is reports from council appointed representatives. The first committee is the Australia Day Awards Committee. Councillor Rabi, I believe you have a report on that.
I do, Mr. Mayor, thanks very much. And it was very well attended. We also like to congratulate Kathy Smith, Citizen of the Year, Marie Selstrom, Senior Citizen of the Year, Sam Bell, which was the Young Citizen of the Year, our High Country Quilters, which won the community group, and the Mansfield Open Studio Trail Most, which was the community event of the year. And I'd like to congratulate the 14 new Australian citizens, the conferees that swore their allegiance to our great nation, Australia. Also, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to mention young Amy Camilleri, and I hope I've said that right, Camilleri. She was our 2023 Australia Day Young Ambassador, and she did a fantastic job. A very inspiring young woman from our local high school. Also, I'd like to thank Mad Orchestra, Mansfield First Scouts and Girl Guides, the Rotary Club, the High Country Horsemen and Women, and they all made the day a great success. But Mr. Mayor, especially like to thank two of our staff, which is Chelsea and Gareth. They did an amazing job, and all of the staff at Mansfield Shire to make it was a really wonderful day, beautiful, sunny, warm, lovely day. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Arabi. The other committees, so the Mansfield Shire CEO Employment Matters Committee, it has met and it considered legally privileged information. And the Municipal Association of Victoria Committee, it hasn't met, but just for information, it's going through elections right now. So there's an election for president of the MAV and for all the board positions. So we'll have an update on that in at our next meeting. Councillors, could I have a recommendation, please, on those committees? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The council note the verbal reports provided by councillors in relation to their representation on external committees.
Seconder, Councillor Webb. All those in favour of the motion? Motion's carried. Public question time. We have one public question, which comes from Mr. Ed Adamson. And the question is, to what measurable extent is council responding to the government calls to get to carbon neutral? Thanks for your question, Mr. Adamson. The answer is that the Mansfield Shire Council will be carbon zero in its practices by 2025. And the details of that are in tonight's report. We have a report on the Climate Action Plan. So if you stay tuned, or if you want to skip through the agenda to that, you'll see what we've done to get to that, to get to carbon zero. So, and we are apparently one of the first councils to be able to do that in the short term. So thanks for your question. And that's all for that one. Moving along to item 13.1, the Chief Executive Officer's report. Councillors, do we have any questions for the CEO? No. In that case, can I have a motion in regards to the CEO's report? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Motion being that council receive and note the CEO's report for the period 13th of December 2022 to 16th of February 2023.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Seconder, Councillor Arabi. Councillor Webb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Arabi.
No, thanks.
In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Item 13.2.1 is the impact route funding. The responsible officer is the Acting General Manager of Infrastructure and Planning, Melissa Crane. Councillor, do we have any questions in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I have a couple of questions to Ms. Crane. The contributions from developers, has that been a specific part of all of our previous developments done by this council? And I'm saying with this council, the Mansfield Shire Council.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. The development contributions that are described in the report, one of them is already a condition on a planning permit that was recently issued. The other development contributions are ones that are estimated to be included on permits yet to be issued under the Planning and Environment Act. They're ones that we can apply to those developments after we had approved a range of development plans in the area that require those development contributions. So they haven't come in yet. One of them has a permit condition with that requirement, so there's some certainty about that one. The other ones are permits yet to be issued. That said, one of them is for, there are applications in train for both of those other developments, and we'll be having permits issued in the next couple of months.
Okay, and so am I right in reading the report that the developers' contributions, certainly in the case of Heighton Lane, are for about 960,000?
That is correct.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, just to continue on for that. It's just so I get perfect understanding of this. So that 960,000, or actually 965,000, will go to the development of the Heighton Road.
Yeah, through you, certainly through you, Mr. Mayor. So the impact route does have a co-contribution element from council across the whole of the route. The money that we've been able to raise through the application of development plans and issuing of planning permits for those developments have allowed us to get the Heighton Lane contribution funded through development rather than through council funds, which has been a really positive outcome, particularly from a ratepayer perspective for infrastructure. So that's where aiming in long term to try and make council contribution side of road infrastructure provision.
That's terrific. Thanks, Ms. Crane.
Councillor Ravi.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just following on from Councillor Holcomb's questioning there, so it would be logical, or is it true to assume that there wouldn't be any contributions from the residents of Heighton Lane for this project? Is that correct?
I'm happy to take that.
That is correct.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, yep. There was a bit of a delay there. Yeah, I think Ms. Crane just answered yes, that's correct.
Right. Yeah, thanks very much. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Ravi. Any other queries? Councillor Webb.
Just a comment. That's a massive grant and a really well done to the executive for gaining it. It's going to make a massive difference down that end of town, and it's really exciting to see some work happening down there. So well done.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. In that case now, can I have a motion in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The motion is that council endorses acceptance of the successful grant funding offer from the Australian Government's Remote Roads Upgrade Pilot Program for the Impact Route project in the amount of $9,865,256. It approves a financial co-contribution to the project of $2,466,314. And point 3, it authorised the CEO to sign the funding agreement with the Australian Government.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Can I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Webb. Councillor Holcomb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I'd just like to say a few things, Mr. Mayor, if I could. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the work of the executive team in getting this. It's a huge grant, a massive grant. we're one of only 2 shires in Victoria to get that grant. We also were able to get that grant at the time when the previous government was replaced by the Labor government, so it was highly contentious whether that grant was going to be acknowledged and accepted by the new government. It was, and that's a credit to the executive team for their lobbying. It's also a credit to the member for Indi, Helen Haynes. She was very influential in us getting this grant, and she stuck to her guns in pushing Mansfield forward. And in fact, there was one meeting where Kirsten Alexander was present with the new Minister for Infrastructure, Catherine King, and both Ms. Alexander and Helen Haynes really pushed our case for the grant. And as I said, there was only 2 states and 2 councils in Victoria that got that grant. I think it's also important to acknowledge the contribution from developers. Developers have been getting a lot of criticism, and on Heighton Lane, they've been getting an awful lot of criticism. One developer had his name and swear words put up on signs on his development. Yet it's these developers that are contributing $965,000 to this road. This road wouldn't happen, in how it's going to end up, would not have happened without that contribution. So I think it should be really acknowledged by all the residents on Heighton Lane that their road is now going to be upgraded totally after probably, certainly since I've been following council, probably for the last 15 years or so, Heighton Lane residents have been lobbying to get improvements done and nothing's happened. It has now, but it's been done with the help of developers' contributions. That should be remembered. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Webb has seconded. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just to wholly endorse Councillor Holcomb's comments, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Rabi.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I also endorse wholeheartedly Councillor Holcomb's comments, very succinct and to the point. And also, yeah, I also wish to thank a federal member for helping us get this magnificent grant. It's going to really help. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Look, I'd just like to add just a bit further. I think when we came into council, we knew the 2 most troublesome roads were Heighton Lane and Rifle Butts Road. And this grant has, knocked those 2 over in one thing. There's been a lot of complaints coming out of those areas. So it's good that we were able to do this. I think it did start off with the National Party as they proposed the grant, and then there was a change of government. So I think, we've done well, really well. The executive done really well to hang on to it right through. It was a bit touch and go there for a while. And as Councillor Holcomb said, there's only 2 shires in the state that were able to access this grant, mainly because the impact road had to go over 20 kilometres. So to find a road 20 kilometres long took some fair engineering brains to sit down and have a look at it. So it actually goes out Rifle Butts Road, then out Chapel Hill Road, and then a connector down a small lane. Someone help me out to the Merridging. So it goes right through. So it's a very handy agricultural link road. We will be able to, farmers out on the Merridging side of town will be able to get trucks through an all-weather road when this is completed. So and it's also part of a tourism link as well too. So well done to everyone involved. Having said that, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried. Item 13.2.2 is the Climate Action Plan, and the Acting General Manager of Infrastructure and Planning, Melissa Crane, will answer any queries, councillors, if you have any. Councillor Rabi.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Crane, do you know why we can't get out of our current contract with Brown Coal Power Provider. I believe that may have been signed before this council in 2021, and that's active till 2025. Is that correct? And there's two parts to the question, I suppose, is when was it signed? How long does it go for? And
Through certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor, and apologies, my internet connection's not. So the contract that we till 30th of June 2025, it was about 18 months ago, period of time. I think it was match 2 years.
Ms. Crane, can I just interrupt
costs
you there?
in the existing contract and looking to do and have to there will be no way to do that.
Sorry, I'll have to interrupt there, Ms. Crane. I didn't hear hardly any of that. I'm not sure whether any other councillors did. No. So I'm not sure whether you can try and enhance your signal somehow, but I'm sure the CEO can answer that query.
Yeah, I probably won't have the same level of detail, Mr. Mayor, but absolutely it was it was a contract that was locked in. As I understand it, it was a sort of a collaborative tender process that was run. I'm not sure exactly what body it was run through, but council had joined in, and I think it would have been around 2020 when that process was run. And because it was a collaborative process and because we were locked in 2020 before the climate action plan was completed, we couldn't withdraw. So we are committed and through until the end of that, contract. We may have Ms. Crane back again. Are you able to just confirm the end date of the contract?
Yeah, thank you. I think I am. I think we've resolved my problems. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. Our contracts are till 30th of June 2025. We have explored costs of exiting early versus and going into a better contract, but haven't been able to justify that. It is a complicated contract to any point in time. So unfortunately, we will have to wait. It would have been nice to do it sooner, but 2025 is still a reasonably ambitious target, and it's also ahead of a lot of other councils in the region.
Thanks, Ms. Crane. You're still a bit scratchy there, so you might want to try and enhance that a bit if you can. Does that answer your question, Councillor Rabi?
yes, it does. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks. Any other queries? No, in that case, can I have a motion, please? Councillor Rabi.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the motion that council adopt the Mansfield Shire Council Climate Action Plan.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. A seconder? Councillor Webb. Councillor Rabi, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I believe this is an ambitious target by 2025, but as Ms. Crane's and the CEO's already alluded to, that we can't get out of the contract until 2025. If we could have got out of that contract, we could have gone to a renewable energy contract and would have had this implemented a bit earlier. However, there is a quote inside the plan, and it says, "This ambitious but achievable target positions Mansfield Shire Council as a leader in local government corporate climate action, not only within the Hume region, but also within Victoria, which is an outstanding achievement for our council. Council has listened to the community, and we've made the decision to take action in committing to a net zero emissions, which is a positive step. And to get to that step, we're going to do it through renewable power purchase, energy efficient buildings, street lighting and purchase of offsets. So thanks very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Webb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I will. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. As chair of the Golden Murray Climate Alliance, I had the opportunity to discuss some of our actions in this climate action plan with the broader Golden Murray region. And the general consensus is that net zero by 2025 is a fantastic result. It's well and above most of our neighbouring shires and what they're achieving. The sort of the consensus is about 2030 is general net zero. So good to see we're ahead of the curve there. We do have the advantage of being a very small shire and relatively small amount of emissions compared to other councils. So there should be no excuse to do it as quick as possible, which is what we're doing. The quicker we can get this in place, the better for everyone. We all know what the pressing urgency of climate action is. So I'm pleased to get this through and pleased to get this going. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd like to endorse the plan as well. And I think there's a few things that really stood out from my perspective. One was the great community engagement that took place in this whole exercise. That was quite extraordinary. And the feedback we got was excellent in helping come up with the final plan and providing input into the final plan. I think, again, folks, brings to attention how focused we are on achieving net zero emissions, and that we will achieve these targets with very little impost on ratepayers' money. This has been achieved. We haven't wasted money anywhere on this. It's just been targeted in specific areas which are going to get the long run result or long run objective of zero emission. So I think it's been a great use of ratepayer funds. The other thing I'd also like to acknowledge, it's not in the climate action plan per se, but there's a few things in the Mansfield farming community which go unheralded. One of which is that farmers over the last 15 years have planted at an absolute minimum 135,000 trees. This is an extraordinary number that is not really well known in the community, but a recent survey done by the VFF has indicated that by about half the members have done 135,000 trees. So the farmers in our shire are also leading the way in terms of their approach to climate action. Also, one of the farmers is already a carbon neutral producer and one of the very, very, very few carbon neutral producers in Victoria. And that's also a credit to what's going on in that farming community with respect to climate activity. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. No further speakers. I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 13.2.3 is the Mansfield Open Space Strategy. The responsible officer is Acting Manager of Planning and Environment, Melissa Crane. Councillors, do we have any, planning and infrastructure, so I read that wrong. Councillors, do we have any questions for Ms Crane? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ms Crane, have we had a specific open space strategy before with this council? Has it been a clearly defined strategy in the past?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm hoping you can hear me clearly this time. No,
Yes.
This is the first open space strategy we've had at Mansfield Shire that specifically looks at, more particularly, having development contributions being able to be staggered in terms of the 5 to 7.5%. So we've not had an open space strategy of this type before.
So in the past when we've had open space and council has ended up with a series of drains around, for want of a term, around various developments, which are a massive cost to the Shire rather than adding to the open space in the particular development. Will we be faced with that? Are we going to go down that track again, or does this open space strategy clearly prevent that from happening?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor, the real value, there's a couple of really important, valuable elements that come out of the strategy. One is absolutely that we are specifying the type of open space we'll take as a public open space land contribution, being unencumbered land, not with drainage reserves or retardation basins. We may take on those reserves as part of a development, but it won't be part of their public open space contribution. So we don't lose the ability to get that contribution just because there might be a drainage reserve that needs to come across to council. In addition, it also allows us to specify where we would like these open spaces to go, so we don't end up with little pocket parks all over the place, but we have well-located parks of a reasonable size that can actually service our community in a better way. And the third really important outcome is that it will take away the questions that may have. So at the moment, the only way we can claim public open space is through the planning scheme, clause 5202. And it basically has a basic contribution of 5%, and that can be challenged at VCAT. So there's always a risk at the moment that if without a strategy behind us, that may be further reduced if somebody chose to challenge that. With this strategy in place, there's not the ability to challenge those contribution amounts is significantly reduced, if not eliminated. And we're also able to ask for a higher percentage than would normally be specified without the open space strategy in place.
Thanks, Mr. Crane.
Councillor Raby.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. To Ms. Crane, is it possible to have a contribution to the council from a developer and that contribution is spent at a botanic park, or is this specifically around the development that the developer's doing?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor, the public open space contributions have to be spent in the area in which they are acquired. In this case, they're acquired in Mansfield. They can be spent in Mansfield. They can be used for the upgrade or creation of new open spaces. So that includes if we have upgrade works to make to Botanic Park, the contributions we have received from Mansfield developments can go towards that work.
Thank you, Ms. Crane.
Any other queries, councillors? Can I have a motion in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the motion that Council adopts the Mansfield Open Space Strategy 2023 and the Mansfield Open Space Strategy Contributions Plan 2023 to inform the preparation of an amendment to the Mansfield Planning Scheme. Commence preparation of a planning scheme amendment to implement the recommendation, and commence preparation of planning scheme amendment to implement the recommendations of the strategy.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Raby. Councillor Holcomb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would. Just very quickly, Mr. Mayor. I think this is absolutely critical, and the fact that it's the first time it's been done is a credit to the executive for pushing this, getting behind it, and also for engaging the community, because my understanding is there's been widespread community engagement on this project. It'll also be terrific to see that we're not going to be, I use the word dudded by developers like we have in the past, to be honest. There's been some terrible things that we as a council are now inheriting because of work done by developers in the past. It's a massive impost on ratepayers' funds. And this sort of strategy will give us far more control over the type of open space that we get, and it also will provide funding for us to maintain those open spaces as well and develop them as well. So I think it's a strategy which I highly recommend.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Raby, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just to further to that, Mr. Mayor, that it's a great outcome for our community moving forward, that we won't be inheriting drainage pits as open space. Kids can't play in drainage pits. Everyone knows that, full of snakes. So for our connectivity and the way we live in, in our beautiful Mansfield environment, for our connectivity and having the open spaces and for some children to go and play, it's where we can decide where these are going to go and make it better, a better livable community. I think this is a great outcome, and I'd like to thank council officers involved in this. There is a lot of time and effort, a lot of community consultation, and I think it's a great outcome. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Item 13.2.4 is the Streamlining for Growth grant funding application. Acting General Manager of Infrastructure and Planning, Melissa Crane, is the responsible officer. Councillors, do we have any queries or questions in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And sorry, Ms. Crane, just a question to you again. So sorry about this. Is this the first time we've had an infrastructure plan, or is it before?
It's certainly through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it is. The infrastructure plan is the first step towards being able to apply development contributions plan for the township of Mansfield to get, apart from open space contributions, but other contributions like what we're getting for Height and Lane more broadly to our infrastructure requirements for the township.
So a couple of things that will address in terms of infrastructure. Correct me if I'm wrong, and let me know if there's some of the ones which you regard as really important, but would that be things like childcare, medical centres? What else would be covered in that would you regard as critical infrastructure for our Shire?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, there'll be two elements to the infrastructure plan. There'll be the physical assets that council will manage, that it'll identify what our existing infrastructure provision is, where it needs to be upgraded to accommodate our future growth, and the costs to do that. And that part of it will be what we use for the development contributions, so how it directly affects council. There'll also be an assessment of community infrastructure requirements, so it will look at whether there are other needs above and beyond the physical infrastructure of roads, drainage and the like, and look to provide. So for some of those elements like childcare or schools, it's not something council can deliver on, but it will end up with recommendations on how we need to advocate or where those pressures are being felt for that. So it will give all of those services that we don't provide as a council some extra support that they may need to get the funding and the growth within their infrastructure as well going forward. And
sorry, Mr. Mayor, just
you're right.
Question. And how long do you think it will take to put this strategy together? What's the time frame?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the strategy itself, I'm imagining it will probably take us, we're actually out to tender at the moment for a consultant to put together the plan. So we're hoping to appoint one in the very soon. Once they've put the plan together, we'll have to go through a fairly large engagement process because it will have implications for the broader community. There'll be a number of things we'll be doing. We'll be looking for people to help us identify any gaps that we don't know about as well. So it'll be a fairly big engagement piece to develop the plan. So I'm anticipating we'll have the plan. We're hoping to have the plan by the end of this year. looking to then convert it into that development contributions overlay next year.
Thanks, Crane. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Ms. Crane, just at one point, you mentioned earlier you spoke about the township of Mansfield, but I'm sure you meant the Shire of Mansfield, didn't you? Because this fund will actually work across the whole planning scheme.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, that's not actually the case. So the way these sort of plans have to work, they are by a locality, not a municipality. So in this instance, we are only able to apply it against areas where we have strong development pressure, and the Mansfield Township itself is where we're feeling all of our pressures at this point. There are limitations on the other settlements in the municipality that have led to them not being large enough to require this type of level of infrastructure plan, because there's not a lot of area. The areas where we need infrastructure upgrades don't have a lot of development potential. So as much as you could do a plan for somewhere like, perhaps you might think about Goffs Bay, it's predominantly built out. So there's not a lot of development that could happen within those small lots already. So it would be hard to do a development contributions on an area that doesn't have a lot of future development at this point in time. With some of what we would do going forward on some of the outlying areas, say for example, Bonnie Doon, with the Bonnie Doon plan, there's some areas identified for rezoning. They'll get placed into a development plan overlay as well, as similar to what has happened to the properties in Highton Lane. And that development plan overlay will allow us to look to get development contributions in for anything that might need to happen in those areas, independent of an infrastructure plan specifically.
Very good. Thank you for that. Councillors, can I have a motion in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Motion being that Council endorses acceptance of grant funding in the amount of $350,000 from the successful application to the Victorian Government's Streamlining for Growth program for the preparation of an infrastructure plan for the Mansfield Township, and authorises the CEO to execute the funding agreement.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. A seconder? Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Webb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Holcomb.
Just very briefly, Mr. Mayor. No, I think this is a very exciting grant to get. It's a critical grant to get. It's critical for the growth phase that we're going through. And also, for some of us councillors, getting developers' contributions in this area was one of our election promises. So I'm extremely happy to see this this progressing. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? No. In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 13.2.5 on tonight's agenda is the IWM grant application, which is the Goffs Bay Water Treatment Plant. Again, we have Acting General Manager of Infrastructure and Planning, Melissa Crane. Councillors, do we have any questions or queries? Councillor Rabi.
I've got one. And it's for the general public that are watching tonight. What is IWM? What does that stand for?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. IWM is integrated water management. So integrated water management's more than just providing for sewerage systems. It's about the whole water cycle that supports a community. So integrated water management's quite a broad area, and the feasibility will look at all elements of water, but the predominant focus in this case for Goffs Bay will be looking at sewerage and how that can be addressed.
Thank you.
Councillor Holcomb.
Ms. Crane, what's the time frame for this study? What's the timing of it?
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is another one that's actually currently out on tender. We don't get a lot of time from when they give us the grants. The time to get notified of the grants tends to be a bit longer than sometimes we'd like, but it's out on tender at the moment, and we'll look to try and have a consultant in place working on that feasibility in the next 6 weeks or so. I'm hoping this one is done in this financial year. I'm not sure of the exact date, but I believe it's fairly short. And we will be working pretty closely to get that moving, because it's really critical, because the next stage will be advocating for funding to build it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Crane, there's a number of ratepayers out in the Goffs Bay region that are struggling with various approvals for planning matters, usually around water and sewage and waste and things like that. Will this plan help them?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it won't help them with their immediate problems, unfortunately, because this will just be showing a way we can provide them with sewage, or like a reticulated sewage system of some kind in the long run. There are other actions that we're working through with the EPA and DECA and Goulburn Murray Water. So we're trying very hard to get all of those different agencies in a room to really unpack the issues that we're facing on the small site-by-site issues that have come up, and recognising that these issues have been going for a number of years now, and the resolutions are not simple. They're very complicated systems and fairly legislatively restrained, which is making it even more complicated. But we will work to unpack all of those complications and find a resolution for the people that are affected.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Raby.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Crane, do you know whether the Goss Bay Boat Club will be captured within the integrated water management plan, or are they just outside it?
For you, Mr. Mayor, they are actually, we will look to include connecting them into a sewerage system of some kind in the long run, but we are still working to try and provide them with an interim arrangement for wastewater management, particularly with their redevelopment that they're undergoing at the moment.
Yeah, good. Thanks very much.
Ms. Crane, just a question. Obviously, this has been driven really hard by the Goffs Bay community to get reticulated system there in the past. So they'll obviously be pretty excited about the prospect of that. And also, we as council, and I'd like you to acknowledge if this is true, but we as council spend a lot of money on inspecting sewage systems in Goffs Bay, septic tanks, which are very close to the lake, and it costs the Shire a lot of money to do that. So the start of this is obviously something really good for the people out there.
Yep, certainly. We do spend a significant amount of money in terms of resources to inspect and try to work with people with non-compliant systems, often through no fault of their own. Their systems are non-compliant. They may have purchased it that way or whatever. But we certainly want to work with each one of those people where we can to try and resolve their issues, with due consideration of the fact we don't, I think that there's a balancing act to be reached in these ones where trying to get them compliant now without having people having to spend too much money before they've got the ability to get onto reticulated sewage will resolve all of their issues either. So it's a bit of a balancing act, that one.
Thank you. Councillors, can I have a motion in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the motion that, I'd like to move the motion that Council endorses the acceptance of grant funding from the successful application to the Victorian Government's Enhancing Urban Water Security, Iconic Urban Waterways and Recreational Values initiative, the Goffs Bay Water Sensitive Town Plan Feasibility Study for $117,520.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. A seconder. Councillor Raby. Councillor Holcomb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Oh, only very briefly, and I think it's summarised really well in the executive's report, there's a sentence there that says, Goffs Bay is an unsewered town on Lake Eildon. It is identified as a designated high-risk subcatchment in Mansfield Shire's wastewater management plan. That to me just sums up, this is an urgent matter. It's got to be a priority. And to be honest, it's a no-brainer.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Rabi, do you wish to, as seconder, speak to the motion?
I think everything's just been said.
Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I do just want to draw the public's attention to that this is a significant step into activating Lake Eildon project. So provided this all works out and we're able to get our reticulated sewage in the Goffs Bay, Mountain Bay area, it unlocks a significant amount of potential for commercial development in form of, I think there's a resort and potentially a golf course sort of in the master plan. But it means that this land is able to be properly managed from a sewerage point of view, and it provides huge opportunity for new businesses entering the area.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. The item number 13.2.6 is the transfer station grant application. Miss Crane, you're on duty again, doing the heavy lifting tonight. Councillors, do we have any queries or questions of Miss Crane? Councillor Rabi.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Okay, Miss Crane. You got any ideas about how we're going to go about our glass, or is this funding is obviously for to give us some ideas about the glass recycling?
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the funding actually enables us to start commencing some works that are in our previously adopted Resource Recovery Centre master plan. So the master plan has a designated area towards the front of the property before where we've got the landfill drop-off, where we are looking to build a hard stand concrete slab with a roofed area to allow drop-off of glass and FOGO before they end up in the waste to landfill area. So that was identified in the master plan, and we're looking to use that funding to start build that part of the approved master plan, which is a great outcome because anything we build out of that master plan normally would have to come out of the waste charges. So it is a savings in terms of being able to access this funding means we don't have to raise the money through charges, which is a really great outcome from our perspective.
Just continuing on that, and I suppose it's not specific to this, but have you heard any rumours about when the government's going to introduce the buyback scheme for glass at all?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you're referring to a container deposit scheme, the last indications were that they were looking to implement one this year in 2023. I've seen no movement on that since they said it was going to be 2023, but we are certainly hoping that's the case because container deposit schemes are an excellent way to separate reusable containers, recyclable containers from the waste streams.
So following on from that question, then if they do introduce that this year, that may change this process a little bit. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, it won't. It'll just still allow us, it will mean that a container deposit scheme is likely to mean then that we'll have more commodity value on these separated materials than we might have otherwise.
Yep, thank you.
Any other queries, councillors? No, in that case, can I have a recommendation, please? Councillor Rabi.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. The council endorses the acceptance of grant funding and the amount of $267,000 and $267 $1,500, beg your pardon, from the Victorian Government's Transfer Station Upgrade Fund, round 2, for the provision of a glass drop-off and separation service for Mansfield Shire.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. A seconder? Councillor Webb. Councillor Raby, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I think it's pretty self-explanatory that this council is adopting the FOGO, and we're trying to get pieces out of the rubbish and lessen our landfill. And landfill are the two worst words when they're joined together, in my view. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks for that insightful bit of phrase, Councillor Raby. I think we need Councillor Webb, do you wish a seconder to speak to the motion?
No, just that this is only a good thing. As Councillor Raby said, we're pushing forward with FOGO. There's an enormous amount of pressure on council at the moment, and potential costs coming our way to sort the rubbish problem. And waste is a massive problem across Australia at the moment. This is a good step forward, and we're trying our best to cover all the bases we can. But I guess it's really important for everyone to remember that waste can also be a personal solution, and everything that everyone can do themselves will benefit the entire Shire as a whole. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? No, in that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried unanimously. Item number 13.2.7 is the Courier Street Police Stables. Acting General Manager of Infrastructure and Planning, Melissa Crane, is the responsible officer. Councillors, do we have any questions or queries for Ms. Crane? We don't. Then can I have a motion, please? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Motion being that council, upon completion of works by the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Change, DECA, at the Mansfield Police Stables, requests that they reserve Crown Allotments 2003 and 2005, Parish of Mansfield, the property known as Mansfield Police Stables, for the purpose of public recreation, and appoint Mansfield Shire Council as a public land manager pursuant to Section 14 of the Crown Land Reserves Act 1978. Subject to the provision of a heritage condition report for the building.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Seconder for the motion, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Webb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just to say that it's great to see a historical building like this being restored. And on top of that, it will become a public space for people to use, our community groups to use. It's pluses all around, so well done everyone involved.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Councillor Holcomb is seconded. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
Only as much to congratulate the executive on showing the initiative to pursue this with Delaware as they were then. And as Councillor Webb said, it's a great opportunity for community groups to utilise what is a very historic building that's been done up really well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? If I could just add that, I think for the general public's information that the police stables were built in 1889 and they're an absolutely tremendous building and a big part of our history. And I'd encourage everyone when it is open to the public, for public use, to go along and have a look. Part of it is there's an old portable jail that was used back in Ned Kelly days. So it's a really important part of our history, and it's great that DECA, who are now the new Delwip, actually spent the money on it, and now that Mansfield has taken it back in its present state. So yeah, it's really well worth going to have a look at when it is open. Councillors, if I could put that motion to a vote, all those in favour? Motion is carried. Item number 13.3.1 is the quarterly finance report. The responsible officer is General Manager of Community and Corporate Services, Dina Bleckett.
Through the Mayor, Tony Cooper, Manager for Business Performance, will be joining us.
Oh, okay, great. Hi, Tony.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Just can't see you at the moment.
Yeah, is the camera on?
The responsible officer is General Manager of Community and Corporate Services, Dina Bleckett.
Through the Mayor, Tony Cooper, Manager for Business Performance, will be joining us.
Oh, okay, great.
And you might want to turn off the stream in the background, mate.
Hi, Tony. Did you hear all of that?
I heard a fair bit, yes.
Okay, so I don't need to announce it too much again.
Oh, hello, can you hear me? Sorry, turn the phone off. Sorry.
Right, yeah, all right, Tony, so you're here and we're on item 13.3.1 is the quarterly finance report. Councillors, do we have any queries or questions for Mr. Cooper? Councillor Holcomb.
Tony, just one question. With what we've seen there, that looks a fairly solid result in terms of where we are at the moment versus the full year. Is there anything on that going forward that you would be worried about and that we should be worried about?
Not at this point. We've been increasing our expenditure. That's sort of bopped up in the last 2 months, particularly January, with the works being able to be done through the capital works. So that's bolstering our expenditure. And what that's done for us is sort of from around August to December last year, we're pushing our spare money, or the unspent money, I should say, into investments. So we're getting returns on that. But as the money's now going out and being spent on projects, our investments are sort of returning back to a normal level. But outside that, no, I'm pretty confident where it's at. I think there's a few projects underway that hopefully will start delivering soon, so we can actually get that money out.
So what is this cash that's sitting there? What sort of accounts that's sitting in?
The cash, we put it into $1 million term investments with the best markets going at the moment. So we go through a provider, I think they're based in Sydney, and they send us interest rate limits every day. So when we've got a term deposit coming up, we see what we're getting for 30 days, 60 days, have a bit of a think about how the financial outgoings are going to occur over that period. And then we invest with something that will give us the best return that we can.
So if I'm reading this correctly, we'd have about, well, over $1 million, certainly over $1 million in unbudgeted, going into unbudgeted accounts at the moment, wouldn't we? Sorry.
Into unbudgeted investments?
Yeah, correct.
Yes.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yes, we would. We were probably around 5 million because of the capital programs with the resheets and that being delayed because of the wet weather. So rather than just letting it sit in our, I'll call it our everyday NAB account, earning next to nothing, we were then looking at getting 3%, 3.25%, that sort of stuff on the money.
Okay, that's great. Good one. Thank you, Tony.
And that report will come up in the Audit and Risk Committee where there will be that formal investment report return provided.
Yeah, I thought that wanted to go. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, you're right. Councillors, any other queries of Mr. Cooper? Councillor Rabi.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. G'day, Tony. Hope
There
you're
you go.
well. You're looking good. Hey, I'm just interested to know whether this has been done in the past before, looking at responsibly managing our money, the ratepayers' money, by investing it and getting a good returns that you're getting.
Look, I can't talk to before I started with council last May. But the last 2 years, the interest rates have been going down. So you're really getting next to nothing by lending somebody $1 million while they were getting a fair whack on it. You go back more than 2 years, I couldn't talk to that, but I would hope that, that's what people in this role would look at. And I'm well supported by the senior accountant in that space. And they're the decisions we make that are trying to bring in as much, non-planned revenue as we can through that particular mechanism.
Yeah, thank you. Well done. Thanks.
Councillors, can I have a motion in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The motion is that council receives the quarterly budget report for the period 1st of July 2022 to 31st of December 2022. And point 2, notes the statement by the CEO that a revised budget will not be required for the 2022-23 financial year.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Seconder, Councillor Raby. Councillor Holcomb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, I have nothing further to add, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Raby.
Thanks.
Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Thanks very much for your attendance, Mr. Cooper.
All right, thank you.
Item 13.3.2 is the MOU with North East Pride Partnership. The responsible officer is the Manager of Community Health and Wellbeing, Nola Bales. Miss Bales, can you hear me? 13.3.2 is the MOU with North East Pride Partnership. Hi, Nola.
Oh, hello.
Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you very much.
We're on item 13.3.2, which is the MOU with North East Pride Partnership. Councillors, do we have any questions or queries for Ms. Bales? No. In that case, can I have a motion in relation to this agenda item?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Sorry. Can I just? I do have a question. And I'm sure Ms. Bales is to you or to the CEO, but do we know whether Alpine Moira and Toowong Shires, what they're doing in response to this MOU?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I was at a North East Pride Network meeting yesterday, and Toowong and Alpine have both been invited to join, and there was a representative from Alpine at the meeting yesterday, and he said that they were working through that with their management and through to council. And the Alpine person was the Toowong person was an apology. And I don't think the Moira representative was there at the meeting yesterday, but they were at the one previously. And as far as they indicated at the previous meeting that they were joining the network, but it may not have gone through their council as yet.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so I think Councillor Webb, you had your hand up for a motion. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, our motion being that council provides endorsement for the Chief Executive Officer to sign the Memorandum of Understanding for membership of the North East Pride Collective Network.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. A seconder? Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Webb, you wish to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor. The Northeast Pride Collective is seen as one of the premier bodies in the region who are advocating for LGBTQI plus youth, young people. And this memorandum of understanding costs us nothing, but it gives them the ability to further advocate for funding at a state and a federal level, as well as holding events, which helps this group of young people, which is only a positive. So I'm pleased to move this motion tonight.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Councillor Holcomb.
No, I have nothing extra to add, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried. Thank you, Ms. Bales, for your attendance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 13.3.3 is the response to a petition for housing and accommodation. The responsible officer is General Manager of Community and Corporate Services, Dina Bleckett. Councillors, do we have any queries or questions in relation to this agenda item? No. Ms. Bleckett, perhaps if you could just give us a brief rundown on the history of this petition and how we got to this point, if that was possible.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. In relation to this petition, it's in relation to finding additional key housing, worker housing with residential developments and central town parks. And also looking at an amnesty or at least a relaxation of planning constraints and housing dwelling requirements. In relation to economic development, so we've been working and advocating in this space for quite some time. There is a group that is working together, a group of 8 local government organisations and 3 resort management boards that have been working on a plan in relation to addressing this situation, and we continue to advocate in relation to this. I'll also pass over to the Acting General Manager of Infrastructure and Planning to talk about all of the planning aspects of what's been happening through council.
Certainly. Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. To you, Mr. Mayor, it was your question. The regulatory framework around housing is set through the Victorian planning provisions more generally. So planning in terms of local impacts for releasing land or making housing and the like more affordable or more available, council has only a little limited number of levers we can pull directly. One of them being to provide more parcels of land available for development. So providing for development of subdivisions, broader subdivisions within the townships, with the supply and demand provisions being the more we've got there, the more likely people are going to be able to afford to live on them, because there's not price pointed in terms of they're not flying out of the door before they've even hit the market, which is what has happened traditionally in Mansfield. In terms of the changes that were requested through the petition, relaxing of the planning scheme provisions isn't as straightforward as they perhaps would like. As much as I would love to be able to sometimes relax the planning provisions to achieve a more particular outcome, the reality is it works under the Planning and Environment Act, and we are bound by the Victorian planning provisions, which are set by the state government. And changing that is really difficult. So as the paper refers to, we have the levers we can pull are more in relation to providing more land for development, which is what the Mansfield planning strategy has done. And we've worked to, one of those has already been rezoned. We'll look to rezone 2 more pieces of land in the next 12 months. We'll also look to try and we do regularly speak with the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning about providing some other definitions. So looking at how Airbnbs in particular might be able to have their own specific definition, which would allow us to put some controls around them in terms of planning, and may change that sphere if there was a planning control there where there isn't one at the moment. So there's a few things we can do, but in terms of the specifics, we just need to be very careful that there is a balance, that any changes need to be made about providing for social and affordable housing, but also providing for reasonable housing for people too. So just because the housing is not as expensive does not mean it should be of low quality. So things like living in sheds and things like that are complicated, and we certainly don't want to encourage having people who are already perhaps a bit more challenged financially to be placed in a position where they might have less than ideal living circumstances either. So that's a very hard balancing act to reach. And we certainly will work as much as we can with anyone who's willing to do that, including developers. It is a conversation our planning team regularly have with developers when they come in about what sort of affordable housing options they could or couldn't provide for the community. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. Thank you very much, Ms. Crane and Ms. Fleckett, for that. It's a very, the petition broached a lot of different areas, and I think the report has summed it up very well. And I think, Madam CEO, a copy of the report will be sent to the people responsible for the petition.
Yep,
correct.
Definitely, Mr. Mayor, and certainly would encourage any residents that are, as we've outlined in the report, we're always willing to talk to residents who are interested in exploring some of those ideas further. Encourage them to contact the planning team and find out what they can already do through the planning scheme.
Thanks. Councillors, can I have a motion in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The motion is the council, point 1, thanks Sustainability Mansfield for their submitted petition, and point 2, continues to advocate for solutions to the housing issues within Mansfield Shire.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. A seconder, Councillor Rabi. Councillor Holcomb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Really just endorsing some of the comments, I think your comments, Mr. Mayor. I thought the report was an excellent report. It covers all the issues, provides practical solutions where we can and where we have a say and can influence. So I also endorse what Ms. Crane said and the Mayor said. Go ahead and read that report.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Rabi.
Ditto.
Anyone else? Councillor Webb, do you wish to speak to the motion? No. In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 14 is council meeting resolution action status register. Councillors, can I have a motion for that? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Motion being that council receive and note the Mansfield Shire Council Meeting Resolutions Action Status Register as at 14th of February 2023.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Rabi. I doubt you'd want to speak to that, Councillor Webb.
No.
Councillor Rabi. In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. We have no special committee reports or authorisations, so that brings us to the end of the agenda and tonight's meeting. So I'd like to thank everyone who, from the general public, who tuned in tonight. Thank you for attending, and I'd like to thank my fellow councillors and council officers for their contribution, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in March. Thank you very much and good night.
Night.
Right.